Hi there, I'd like to tell you today about the story of the book that nearly caused revolution at the Institute, and that's this book here, which we hold in the archive. It's the minute book of the first International Workingmen's Association, and this book was donated to the Bishopsgate Institute in 1910 as part of the collection of the Victorian activist George Howe, pictured here. Now, he attended the meetings of this body, which was one of the first coming together of socialist, communist and anarchist thinkers at the time in London in the 1860s. George Howe attended but fell out with one of the attendees as he felt someone was a spy. But there's some really wonderful people attended this, people you might recognise, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, etc., all met together in London and discussed stuff, and this minute book records what they were talking about. As I said, this was given to the Institute in 1910. Not a lot of fuss was made, but in about 1920, a historian called Raymond Postgate wrote a book about the First International. And in the footnotes of this book, he puts quite scandalously about finding the minute book. And if you go and ask for a certain number, you can find this book and look at it. This caused quite a stir and got around the world to the point where in 1923, even the Marx-Engels Institute in Moscow had heard about it. And their head over there, a guy called David Ryzanov, wrote a letter to the British trade delegation at the time, asking at all costs for them to be able to get a copy of this book. Obviously, they were very interested in the history of Marxism and Karl Marx, etc. So this was an intrinsic part of their collections. They wrote to the Institute, firmly rebuffed by our trustee board at the moment at that time was not, should we say, a hive revolution, but more a combination of city businessmen and clergymen, particularly worried about Red Scares and Britain turning to communism. They didn't find this at all appealing. Several requests in the minutes were received over the next few years from different organisations and individuals. Can we have a look at the minute book? We need to see it. Can we have a photocopy? All which were frankly refused straight out. By 1934, the trustees of the Institute had had enough, and David Anajar Romain, who was the chair of the trustees at the moment, instructed the librarian Charles Goss to take the minute book to the Midland Bank Vault in Bishopsgate and lock it away, not only for the minute book's safekeeping, but for the safekeeping of the country at the time, as they feared it was some kind of notebook of Red Revolution and the blueprint for complete communist takeover. It stayed in the Institute from 1934 to 1941, when the Institute received a letter from a gentleman called Brendan Bracken, secretary to Winston Churchill at the time, instructing the Institute, we were best friends with the Soviet Union again, the war had kicked off, we were on the same side, that Madame Maisky, the wife of the Soviet ambassador, should be allowed the minute book at all costs. You would have thought they had other things on their mind. Obviously not. But this was a request too far for the Institute, and out the minute book came. It was given to her. On a quick reading, she came in, typed the whole thing out in the library here with a couple of secretaries. But on first reading, I think there may be a slight bit of disappointment, as it's not really a blueprint for world revolution. More about who's moving chairs next Thursday. But I jest, it is very much a record of what was being discussed by all the attendees at the meeting. But my favourite thing definitely is the back cover. Meetings don't change. A back cover full of doodles. So obviously, not every moment of the meetings was great fun. You even have a saucy lady in a corset here. Could have been drawn by Karl Marx, we don't know. This minute book is now available online on the Bishopsgate website if you look at our archives online. So if revolution does kick off imminently, you know where it all started.